Welcome to A Court of Transformation and Awakening. I'm Lorrie Gray.
And I'm Amanda Grace Harrison.
And today we are discussing Court of Thorns and Roses, Chapter 17.
Oh, not a terribly romantic chapter.
No, it's funny. The last one we're like, it's getting more fun. There's more romance. But now we're like, oh, except for that.
Yes. Sarah J. Maas is all about the bring you up just to slam you down just to bring you back up. Here we go.
It's a roller coaster.
Yeah. So Farrah's having nightmares now understandably, after her day with the Suriel and the Naga. Nightmares. She wakes up. Got anything on the first two pages? She's just...
Oh, I mean, there's so much stuff we could always say about all of it, but a lot of this, I think, is just moving. Again, my focus with this is like, I'm really tuned into Farrah's experience, so much of this is sort of set up for her personal breakthrough. Yeah, but we do see that she's, I think just right at the beginning that we start to see like she deals with a lot of stuff with her dreams, and that there's going to be a repetition there of bad dreams and seeing how that shows up. Which I always think fun, by the way. I'm not sure what your theory is. Like I've so many different theories about what dreams actually are. But I know that part of it, at least that they've shown, is sort of your brain sort of processing everything that you've experienced. I often find it fun, and so do my kids, to look at like having just such a weird dream and then trying to go back through and be like, oh, this thing that happened in like my day and how it creates a really weird dream sequence, like the way that the brain is processing it. I find it to be a fun activity when I can remember my dreams, but not if it's the Suriel's bone fingers clicking.
I don't like nightmares.
I don't like nightmares. Poor thing. Okay, but gosh, so this whole thing. So we've got this fairy. So scouts found him dumped just over the borderline. He's summer court, and he's had his wings ripped off.
Yes. Whoever she was, he keeps saying she took my wings, but she hadn't just taken his wings, she'd ripped them off. So she is a real treat, obviously. Someone we really want to get to know as soon as possible and be buddies with.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, so this is really painful. I didn't have a lot in here until we get to page 153. But did anything else stand out to you?
The other thing was this. It was just Farrah, how she handles it. She took one of the fairy's hands in hers.
Yes.
And like that's how she's going to deal with it. She's just going to be present with this.
Yeah, and so she
realizes he's dying. I knew right then that this fairy was going to die, and so she takes his hand. Becomes the loving nurse with him. Yeah.
And it's so funny that she's like, even in this moment, she's like, his mouth is like full of sharp teeth. Like he doesn't even look human. And she's kind of lying, that it's going to be all right, even though she knows it's not. And she's still, stroking his hair back and, kind of lying that he's going to get his wings back.
Well, she might. Who knows what she thinks about the afterlife? When I first was reading, I'm like, oh yeah, she's like, yeah, it's gonna be all right because soon you'll wake up and you won't have any pain, and you're gonna get your wings back because probably in the afterlife you'll have your wings back and you'll dip in the crystal river and everything will go back to great and you won't have any freckles or age spots or wrinkles. That's what I was told growing up. We'll see. I don't know what Farrah believes, but
she
fit in with
she
mine.
Does not believe what she said though, because she says it was the
she feels bad.
First false vow I'd ever sworn, which was a little bit of her character. So we know that she's not. Yes. She doesn't intentionally tell falsehoods, but here, the comfort for this person outweighs it. And we get to hear this. This words of this ancient prayer that they say as people are dying. Okay, so such an intense moment here, but the part that for me really stood out was, so they get through all of this, and Tamlin has this conversation where he's like, "Why? Okay, so you dislike our kind on a good day, and after Andrus, so just why?" And I love her explanation of, because I wouldn't want to die alone. And that, because I'd want someone to hold my hand until the end and a while after that. That's something everyone deserves, human or fairy.
Yeah.
And I just thought it was such a significant moment of thinking about sort of those things, and I'm like, what are the things that we believe that we have to earn, and what are the things that we believe that we deserve innately just by being alive? And she'd been in this place of like, fairies are like this and humans are like this, but then she did have this belief of like everybody deserving to have someone there when they passed. And you see this distinction between like fairies are this and I'm this, to like, oh, but you're a human being and human beings deserve this thing and I would want this thing, so I'm going to give it to you. And it's such a different way of looking at this other being, as opposed to like us them, this theme that's come up, to okay, but in death we're the same.
Yeah.
And death is scary for everybody. And she's able to access that empathy, that perspective taking, and starts to see that space of like, oh, okay, but like maybe in life I would have been scared of you, but in death we're all the same.
Yeah. It's a big moment for her.
It's a big moment for her. It's a really big moment, especially knowing where she started. So we get to see more of her character. We get to see some of her beliefs.
And from last episode, her throat is painfully tight here as she's expressing this. Mm-hmm. And she finally fully regrets and says that she regrets what she did to Andrus. And that she fully regrets that there was so much hate in her heart. And she did have a lot of hate in her heart, jeez. And she wishes she could undo it. And I'm sorry. So very sorry.
Yep. And yeah, and like I had marked that one too, you know, and then she even talks about like she couldn't remember the last time she'd ever spoken to anyone like that, you know.
Anyone like that, yeah, that's a big deal. Jeez.
Yeah. Because we talked about like way back, like with her family dynamics, like they clearly weren't very open. They found this like homeostasis that works, but like they're not having a lot of like deep open conversations.
And she's not going to have that with anybody else. It didn't sound like she had any friends. She just had her little.
Yeah, and you know, and so it was difficult for this, and like, and she's starting to take those, you know, take his perspective and understand things from his space. Okay, but one of the things this made me think of was, so she's talking about, so she's kind of giving this apology, and it's not something that she does often. She's not used to being that way, and it reminded me of, do you remember back? Gosh, this was so long ago. The 5 love languages book. Do you remember that? Was it 5?
Yeah.
5 love languages?
I just took that again this year to see if I had the same love language.
Did you know that they also have one that's the 5 apology languages?
Ooh, I don't know if I do know that.
I don't think a lot of people do. Like, and it came through, it was like one of those things where like I must have been on some like email list, because I think this was like 3 years ago or like a handful of years ago. It's like, now our new book, the 5 apology languages, which I do not think has caught on the way that other things had. But I actually read through it, and I found this really, really, really helpful, because one of the things that that I saw was sometimes like if my husband and I, if something came up and we were working it out, he would apologize, but like in his mind, an apology was simply saying, I'm sorry. Mm-hmm. And I did not feel apologized to. Like it didn't connect, like saying, I'm sorry in his mind. And I remember we would have conversations where I would go back and I'm like, you didn't apologize. He's like, I did. I literally said the words, I'm sorry. And it was so weird, because I'm like, oh my gosh, like what is wrong with me? Am I just like holding on to this thing? Like, why does him saying sorry not, in my mind, it literally like that didn't even count.
So these 5 apology languages or whatever it is, they're for receiving apologies or for giving an apology?
Well, yeah, so it's both. It's like understanding like what you do when you apologize, but the biggest thing was recognizing that there are these 5 aspects to it, and to understand sort of which parts you need and desire and why, and then to be able to communicate that to other people. And it came at a really good time, because it was a space in our family where we're working through like teaching our kids how to apologize. And it was so great to have the language of understanding that there are actually multiple parts to an apology. And almost like if you don't know what resonates for the other person, maybe just do all 5.
Yeah.
Right?
To be safe. If it's not enough thing you've done.
You know, but in close relationships, to go through it. Anyway, so I pulled it up so I wouldn't forget them. Okay,
cool.
But the five languages of apology, the first is expressing regret. And that might just sound like, you know, I apologize. Accepting responsibility, okay, being able to say some version of like, I was wrong. Making restitution, okay, what can I do to make it right? Genuinely repenting, and repenting as in like, what needs to happen so it doesn't happen again. I'm going to try not to do that again. And then requesting forgiveness, like, will you please forgive me? And it was interesting because I'm like, the actual saying like, I'm sorry, not really a huge thing for me. The part for me that always I come back to is I guess what they're calling repenting, but for me is like, how do we make sure it doesn't happen again? To me, if somebody's like, oh, I did that thing that created an issue for you, sorry. And I'm like, that is not complete to me unless there's a space of like, I understand how I got there, and this is what's going to change so that it doesn't happen again. Because I'm like, I don't want to hear sorry if same thing's going to happen tomorrow and next week and the next day. Like, that doesn't do anything for me. And like, for me, like really recognizing that it was that was the thing where like, I'm continuing to want to talk about something. And so we're in this disagreement where my husband's like, I already said sorry. And he felt like I was continuing to attack him, and I'm not feeling complete. So I'm like, but we haven't resolved it in a way that prevents it from happening again. Yeah. And once I was able to go through, I'm like, okay, I get it. Here's the language. Here's what I need. I'm like, I'm not beating a dead horse. Like, I already understand that you are sorry, and like all of that's great. But to me, the conversation isn't resolved until there's a deep enough understanding to make sure that we don't have the thing happen again. Otherwise, to me, we're just going to repeat the same mistakes. And once he, oh my gosh. And I remember, this is a little cheeky. Sorry, husband, I'm kind of outing you on a podcast. But like, I'm like, these are like the 3 parts of it that I need. I remember a thing happened, and he like counted them on his fingers, and he was like, I'm sorry. I understand what I did. And this is what I'm going to do to make sure it doesn't happen again. And he like ticked them off his fingers. And I'm like, okay, 1, that was a little sarcastic. And yep, it worked. Like, that was what I was like,
I don't like the way you did that, but gosh, that felt good. It actually worked.
There was some attitude because like I started talking. He was like, wait, hold on. I remember the steps. And he went through the steps, and I'm like, and it was like a funny moment, right? Like, it was a lighthearted enough one, but I'm like, okay. Yeah. Okay. There is a part of me that still like habitually wants to keep talking because that's how we always do it. But that was actually what I needed. I just needed to know that there's enough understanding that there's going to be change so it doesn't happen again. Like, that was the part that resonated for me. And I do like the sorry. And I like the understanding of, and I've heard this in different language, but sort of the understanding of, like, I really do understand how or why this hurt you. Like, that understanding is like really important to me.
Those middle 3, I think I apologize and will you please forgive me, not so much. But those 3, I was wrong. What can I do to make it right? And I'll try not to do that again. Or I'll make sure that never happens again. I like better. What's the one in the military? They have to say, sir, yes, sir. Won't happen again, sir. There's something very specific that they're supposed to say every time, but there's a very specific even way. If you had nothing to do with it, if someone higher up than you says something that went wrong, then you immediately own it as if you're the one who did it, and it won't happen again, sir.
Yeah, that ownership. Which again, I mean, I think I have like a thing about like, don't lie, and the truth is, if it's a pattern of behavior, just because there was like this awareness, like, it's very, very highly unlikely that it's one awareness means it's never ever going to happen again. Like, I just want to see that there's, and that's like, my husband and I were talking about this in a different context, but like, there's such a big difference between when somebody is actively working on something. It's like, okay, I'm actively working on not doing this, and yet I'm still a human in the process, versus when people are just like, well, it's just who I am, sorry. Like, nope. Like, I'm all about like giving people grace in the process, as long as there's actual like effort towards change. I feel like that I'll try not to do it, but something more accurate, like this is the step that I'm going to take, like, or this is the understanding, or this is what I'm going to work on. Like, I just need to know that there's some of that.
The try brings up Yoda's. There is no try. There's just do or do not.
Do or do not.
Just
I get it. There's some
because if I say try, then I'm like, well, I was trying, but was I really? But whereas it won't happen again. Like I know it's probably going to happen again, but the fact that you're saying like it won't happen again means that you're like, okay, I got it. I'm taking responsibility for that. It's not going to happen again.
No,
it's
that
not going to
makes-
happen so carelessly again, anyways.
Yes, which okay, that's a good point because like I actually do sometimes have some issues with the word like try and like the difference between trying and committing because I think try usually means like yeah, I'll give it a go until it gets hard
Yeah, exactly.
as opposed to this is actually a thing that I'm committed to and and then there's like a human element to it. Okay, other thing this brought up for me is this is a really fun discussion. And like again, there's more like that. This was such an overview of the thing, but understanding how the apology languages work, and like it's funny. I had taught this to my kids, and then we watched a My Little Pony episode.
My Little Pony.
There was such good stuff in that, like the first like chunk of it. And one of the characters apologized to the other one, and like we watched the apology. I had to like pause and go back. I'm like, did you see it? They did all the parts. And we went back through and we like broke it down. I'm like, that was such a good example of
My Little Pony writers. I love that.
Okay, so this like, will you please forgive me though? I just made a post on Instagram about this. So I'm currently reading another series because I'm go too fast through this one. So I'm currently rereading the From Blood and Ash series by Jennifer L. Armentrout, which is one that
I hear very good things about that from ACOTAR fans.
yes. I think that there are some similarities. I do want to at some point we need to discuss this one. There's some fun things in here, but another one of those moments where deep insights from reading fiction. So I'm going to try not to give anything away from the story, but basically there's a situation where a character lied. Okay. And that was a thing. And somebody said, have you, like, you've truly forgiven this person for that betrayal? And she says, I thought about that for a moment. I think too much value is given to forgiveness when it's easier to forgive, but far harder to forget. That understanding and acceptance is far more important than forgiving someone, I said. I understand why he lied. That doesn't mean I agree with it or that it's okay, but I have accepted it and I've moved on. We've moved on. And I just like thought about that and I made a post about it because I don't know for you. And I think it's because of the very Christian spiritual context in which forgiveness was presented to me in a way that sometimes felt manipulative and it felt forced and it felt like a thing that I had to say whether I felt it or not. That the word forgiveness for me, or like, will you forgive me? Like, I think for a lot of people, that word has sort of lost its true meaning, or it's gotten like it's tied to too many other things for it to really be even something that feels good. I have a lot of clients where they struggle with the concept. And so, yeah, we talk more about understanding and acceptance. And I've resonated with that so much more because I can look at what somebody did and like understanding. It's like, can I understand based on their upbringing, their context, their patterns, their wounds, their trauma, all the things. Can I understand why they did and said what they did? And I think about this even like in aspects of places where like I experienced deeply hurtful things from other people. And I usually can get to the place of like, I understand. Like, I understand why they did that. And I can accept that it's a thing that happened. But that has nothing to do with believing it was okay or right.
No, yeah.
I'm like completely not okay.
No.
100% not something I agree with. And I'm never going to look back on that and think it's a positive. I will forever think that that was abuse and it was not okay. And I can understand why they did it in a way that that person's not a villain. Like, they're not the villain and I'm not the victim. Like, they were a human having, and I can understand the things in their life that led them to do that and still be very, very, very firm. And like, there's no scenario in which that was okay.
Yeah.
And like, I don't like the word forgiveness. I'm like, I don't even know if that word resonates for me. I don't know if it even makes sense to me. Like,
yeah, it's been a little muddied.
It's been muddied.
Sure.
Yeah. But I'm like, understanding, like, can I move to a place where I understand this and don't just paint this person in one stroke? Like, where it's just like, just a villain, like either you're a good person or a bad person. I'm like, no, like that's not how it works for humans.
Yeah.
Again, back to that place of like letting it be complex and like not letting it be black and white. Understanding I can go to, acceptance I can go to, and it lets me keep those firm boundaries and that understanding that like I never have to think that this was okay.
Yeah. It's never gonna be okay.
It's never going to be okay.
But I can, and then I one teaching on forgiveness that I do like is that you give them love or friendship in place of the hatred, anger, punishment that you would have given them for the rest of their life. And that's how you know you've moved to forgiveness, is now there was some neat way over there we're doing where it's like you give them that for whatever it was. And then that's how, like, you don't let your boundaries down and say, oh, we're just going to be best friends now. And I'm going to let you, like, you probably are going to have thicker walls with that person because you know that they can potentially hurt you. But
yeah, and that's interesting because I've heard that too. Now, when I look at like the actual definition of forgiveness, it's more about, it's just letting go of that. It's like letting go of the resentment and the anger.
yeah.
And it's not necessarily now we move to this like love. It's just like, did we let that go? And that's the thing. I'm like, I do think that that's for us. It's not for them. And it doesn't even have anything to do with like the right, wrong. It's just not being burdened by that. And I've had great conversations with people about this. And I think that there sometimes is a place where we can move to, I think unconditional love is available and possible towards everyone. Unconditional love is not unconditional tolerance. Those are different things. Love just being a thing, like whenever I think about this person, I want good things for them and I feel warm feelings. Like, is that possible? Yes. But I don't know that a lot of people, if they've been in a place of hurt, like that's such a far jump.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's like years.
I very seldom, and I think even presenting it or like believing that that's where we're supposed to go can make it really hard. And usually what I present to people first is like, can we just go to indifference?
Yeah.
Like where there's no, it's like, no, there's not like anger and resentment. And I'm not like, this person isn't getting my energy and they're not mental space. And like, they're not showing up in my brain. Like honestly, like a kind, lovingly for you, can we just not have any fucks to give about this? Like, can we just not give it our energy anymore? And there's been a number of relationships in my life where I've found so much more freedom in that, of just being in a place of genuine neutrality, where, because there's some relationships where I'm like, okay, like I don't need to like cut this person off like aggressively. Like if there is an opening for this relationship to ever be healthy because boundaries are listened to and there's growth and there's change, like I'm open to that, but I'm just not willing to like drag myself across cut glass to make it work. I'm just like we have a healthy relationship, that's fine. We have no relationship, like that's fine. And this place of indifference of like, I'm okay with either. But as much as like I'd had teachings, and not always, not from like Christian places, just from like a lot of my coaches are like presenting concepts of unconditional love being the best option. And I'm like, sometimes we can't get on board with that. And I've found a lot of freedom with just, okay, can we get to indifference?
Yeah, I like that.
Just this
beautiful neutrality.
Yeah. Like, because that's what they say, like the opposite of hate isn't love. The opposite of hate is indifference. Like love and hate are both strong emotions to a person that are kind of on the same side. And the opposite of either one is kind of feeling nothing. And especially if it's somebody that's like hurt me in my past, I'm like, sometimes the most healing thing isn't continuing to try to get to this place where I feel differently about them. I'm like, sometimes the freedom is like, I just don't think about them at all. I'm like, there are people right now who live in Indiana, and like, there's good people in Indiana and there's like not good people in Indiana, but I don't ever think about those people.
I don't think about any of them.
I don't think about them at all.
No offense if you live in Indiana.
No, or in
I just
Egypt,
don't know you.
Indiana and Egypt and Japan. Like there are all kinds of people there who never get any of my time and energy because I simply don't have thoughts about them. And yeah, for a lot of people, I'm like, I don't need to be in a place where I have beautiful, healthy thoughts about them, sometimes the best place is just to have no thoughts about them.
Yeah.
And the freedom in that.
That seems like a very healthy neutrality. I like that.
It's a good jumping off point.
I definitely like it better than the pressure. Because if you're in a place where you're still mad at somebody and you're still hurt by them, whatever, definitely the thought of jumping to unconditional love, that's not, you can't just, no.
And it's not going to resonate.
That makes me feel, ew,
here. Right. And I mean, and I think, and that's what I was saying, like back to this idea of like apologies and forgiveness. And I think that's the thing, like when forgiveness is pushed on you as like a thing that you morally have to do to be like a good person, it gets so that's our official statement on how that works.
Not into morality and have to's in that way. Thanks.
Well, it just doesn't work. Like it does not work. Instead of like, oh my gosh, you really should forgive this person, I'm like, what does that even mean? Like, it's just, it just doesn't even make sense. But I have found benefit though from, can I understand in a place that doesn't create a inaccurate judgment of the entire thing? And like, as much as like, I want to be allowed to be a complex human, can I extend the same thing to other people?
Yeah. God bless Indifference. I never knew I would love Indifference so much. You've just opened my eyes.
Oh my gosh.
Indifference.
And
I love it all of a sudden.
I had somebody like, well, what does indifference mean? Okay, this was the way that I had this explained to me by one of my coaches, and I love it. And I've never found a better example. She's like, if you want to know what indifference feels like, she's like, it's like, and okay, this won't apply to everybody. She's like, it's like celery leaves. Okay. Okay, so if I send my husband to the store to get celery, sometimes you get it and it's just the stalks, and sometimes it comes back and it has the leaves on the end. And it's like, do you have a huge preference or whether or not like it comes back with leaves or not? I'm like, no. It's like, if the entire rest of your life you had celery that didn't have the leaves on it, would you be okay? It's like, yeah. And I'm like, when I think about my life, I'm like, I don't have strong feelings towards celery leaves. Like, if my celery comes back and it has some on there, okay, cool. Like, I might chop them up and put them in soup. For making ants on a log, I might throw it away. And if, like, I never saw a celery leaf again for, like, the rest of my life, like, I'm not going to be deeply sad. Like, I just don't have any strong feelings towards it at all. And I don't know many people who do.
Celery leaves.
And I'm like, sometimes they're pretty. Like okay, like I could go with a little bit. Like if I had a, you think of like the cliche picture of like a bag of produce and like the carrots actually have like the green tops, and like, okay, maybe it would enhance my life by this like smidge on occasion if I was trying to like pose a bag. But like for the most part,
pretty indifferent.
And so when I'm really trying to settle into it for people, like, and it also makes me laugh a little bit, I'm like, celery leaves. Can I embrace the emotion of celery leaves towards whatever this thing is? But it's been a helpful jumping off point. And there are some things where I'm like, I think towards this person or this situation, I may never progress beyond celery leaf level emotions, but I'm open to the idea that maybe sometime I'll enter that more evolved unconditional love kind of place. But until then, it's a fun place to hang.
Yeah. The indifferent world of celery leaves. It's a nice place to be.
It's a nice place to be. Okay.
All right, so end of chapter 17.
End chapter 17.
The only thing I had that I noticed at the very end, after she apologized, he's now carrying this poor dead body.
Oh.
And she says, she was going to say something else. She wanted to ask, I wondered if I should say more, if I should kneel and beg for his forgiveness. So she's wondering if she should go through these 5 steps. If he felt such grief, such guilt over a stranger, the guy that he's carrying out, the dead guy. By the time I opened my eyes, he was already down the steps. I watched every movement he made, the muscles of his body visible through that blood-soaked tunic, watched that invisible weight bearing down on his shoulders. So I'm just noticing Feyre, noticing him and how much he cares for this being. And there's just the way she's watching him now, thinking of him differently.
Thinking of him differently. And good for her for being open to seeing somebody in a new light.
Yeah. Yay, Feyre.
Hey, Feyre.
Thank you for joining us here on A Court of Transformation and Awakening. And be sure to hop on over, if you haven't already, to ACOTAR, ACOTAA.circle.so, and sign up to be a member of our community, where you can watch these podcasts even without becoming a member of the community. Or you can dive in deeper and get involved in some stuff that we don't even know what some of it is yet. Right now, there's adventures, there's fan chats, there's question marks. And you can help shape that, because we're in the early stages. We're on our virgin voyage, so you can shape it. So jump in there and tell us what's what.
It's so fun.
And we'll see you there, guys.
See you there.
Bye. Bye.